Hello. So, this video was requested by Isakasakumi's Simp. Lots of love to you. I'm really sorry if this story is a little different than what you expected it to be. To be honest, I really didn't have much ideas for this video, but I hope you will like it despite this. And as always, I apologize for any mistakes I have made.
The world in which Hinata lived wasn't safe for people like him. Namely, for Omegas. Over the past several years, the number of alphas living in this world has increased significantly, and Omegas has remained almost the same. This made rapes common and not surprising. Most Omegas feared for their lives and health every time they went outside. In a world where the alphas were highest in the hierarchy, they were almost invulnerable. The established applicable laws did not apply to them and they were able to do whatever they wanted. Hinata was just returning to his and his partner's house after finishing work. At first his boyfriend wouldn't let him keep working, but Shoyo was a stubborn Omega. And he was strong. Well, physically he might be weak compared to alphas, but he was strong mentally. He didn't want to be dependent only on his partner, and besides, he liked his workplace. It was already dark, so he was careful as he walked down the street. He was going through his heat, but he had taken high-class medicine bought for him by his boyfriend. They were generally difficult to access and very expensive, but they were so effective that immediately after taking them any signs of going through heat disappeared. Hinata took them once a day, as their effect lasted around 26 hours. Thanks to the effective medicine, Hinata wasn't so worried about himself at the moment. Well, in fact, even though at the moment it was as if his heat didn't exist, some other alpha might still want to get their hands on him, but he didn't think anyone would dare to do so. His wrist and neck had bite marks that clearly showed that he was claimed. In addition, the way they looked clearly indicated that his partner was not the usual alpha, but the upper-class one that nobody would like to mess with. I wonder what he is doing right now, Hinata said to himself as he once again started thinking about his partner. I hope he has already eaten. Fortunately, the streets were almost empty that day. So Hinata made it home fairly quickly, without any major inconvenience. He took off his jacket and shoes, then was about to go to the bedroom, where he expected to see his partner. However, to get to the intended place, he first had to go through the living room, and it was there that he saw Suna, which was the name of his partner, sleeping on the couch in a sitting position. He was probably waiting for the orange-haired man to come back, but in the process, he fell asleep from exhaustion. Hinata smiled slightly and carefully covered his beloved with a blanket. You must have been really tired and yet you were still waiting for me. Shoyo was always cautioned by his mother against alphas. She told him how aggressive they are and that he must be careful. Hinata himself was an unwanted child at first. His mom was raped and then left alone to herself. However, when Shoyo was born, she felt so much love for him that it was hard to believe even for her. Unfortunately, when Hinata was only 11, he witnessed two alpha fight for one Omega. They were so caught up in their emotions that they stopped paying attention to their surroundings. It was close, and they would accidentally hurt Shoyo. But his mom protected him by pulling him aside. However, she herself didn't notice the approaching, speeding car, which didn't have time to brake and hit her. This accident cost her her life. And from then on, Hinata really hated alphas. But now, looking at his lover, Shoyo remembered his first meeting with Suna. It was when for the first time, since he had lost the roof over his head, he had experienced heat. He had nowhere to go, and he didn't have enough money to pay for the medicine or for a stay in the hotel that was supposed to be a safe place for Omega's wick-out partner during their heat. Back then Hinata was running through the streets, trying to find a place where he could pass through this hard time. It was terribly hard for him and he felt weak. He didn't even have time to blink when an alpha, who had evil intentions towards him, came in front of him. He wanted to take advantage of him in his moment of weakness. It was close and he would have succeeded. But then Suna was passing by and decided to help the younger boy. He was also influenced to some extent by the fact that Hinata was in his heat, but he was in good control of himself. So Suna took Shoyo to a safe place for him and paid for his stay there. Their next meeting took place 3 years later. At the cafe where Hinata's beta friend offered him a job as a waiter and Rentaro was his client. Since Shoyo had always been on his own since his mother's death and had no one to help him at the time, he remembered Suna well and was still very grateful to him. Somewhere in his head he was aware that Alpha can be dangerous, but he decided to ask anyway. "How can I repay you?" And that question was actually what started their relationship. Suna was interested in Hinata since their first meeting, although he didn't show it at first. And when it comes to Hinata feelings, well, Suna was different from all the alphas the younger boy had ever come into contact with. He might be a little cold at times, but he was caring at the same time. He was also not an aggressive type, he was rather calm, and you could even say lazy. And Hinata felt comfortable with him. And now, Hinata and Suna have been mated for quite some time. Unfortunately, their relationship remained as a secret. There was a division into different classes among the alphas and omegas. Ever since Hinata became an orphan, he belonged to one of the lower classes. Suna, on the other hand, was an alpha of the highest class. Therefore, they had to hide what their true relationship was. Suna's father had declared him long ago that he wouldn't accept for his son a partner other than a high-class Omega, or eventually another Alpha. Since Suna and his family were highly recognizable, Rentaro had to do everything he could to avoid rumors. Therefore, he secretly, through an intermediary, bought the apartment in which they were now, so that he could spend more time with his partner, without the risk of someone noticing them. Hinata felt thirsty, so he headed his steps towards the kitchen. He took a glass out of the cupboard, intending to pour himself some juice, but due to carelessness, the glass slipped from his hand and fell to the floor, shattering. Damn! Hinata knelt down to pick up the shards of glass, and accidentally he cut his hand open. At the same moment he heard footsteps nearby. He turned to see Suna approaching him. Shoyo gave him a soft smile that quickly faded. "Did I wake you up with a noise? I'm sorry." Suna didn't answer, but instead, he carefully grabbed Hinata's hand and sat him down on a nearby chair. "I'll pick it up. You should be more careful." When the dark-haired man finished cleaning, he took something out of the cupboard and approached Hinata again. He knelt in front of him and carefully dressed his cuts. When he was finished, he placed gentle kisses on the hand of the shorter man where the cuts had occurred. These types of subtle gestures still affected Hinata, making his cheeks red. As it was already quite late, after Hinata finally drank, they both headed to the bedroom. They talked about various things for a while. Mainly about how Hinata's day was, because the dark-haired man wanted to be sure that nothing bad had happened to his lover. However, some quietly spoken words that escaped Suna's mouth shocked Hinata. "I wish you would stop taking your medicine." "What?" Hinata looked at Suna in surprise, the dark-haired man also looked at him as he spoke. "Don't make me say it." There was silence between them for a moment. Finally, Suna sighed, turning his face away from where Hinata was. "I want to have kids with you." Shoyo stared at Suna for a moment, unable to speak. "What?" "You know that this way it will be much harder to keep our relationship as a secret." "I know. I want to stop doing this. Hide what's really between us. But your parents. If you are expecting my baby, they will certainly agree to us getting married." "Married?" Hinata felt quite happy hearing these words. He hadn't expected Suna to think of such things. But it only showed how much he cared about Shoyo. "What if they will want an abortion to take place? Or will expecting you to leave me?" "They will not. At least not my mother. Maybe it will be different with my father, but I know he will not be able to stand up to my mother." Suna's mother was a female alpha, while his father was a male omega. Therefore his mother was the one who dominated the relationship. "I understand if it's too sudden and you don't want to." I want. Hinata replied quickly without thinking. I want. When should your medicine stop working? Hinata checked the time and his eyes widened. He hadn't realized that so much time had already passed. About 15 minutes from now. Suna grabbed Hinata's hand in his and laced their fingers together, then looked into his lover's eyes. He saw agreement in them. Inform your cafe manager that you will not be able to go to work tomorrow. So Hinata chose his employer's number and did what his beloved told him. It took a few minutes, so when he finished talking, Shoyo slowly began to feel the stopping effects of his medicine. Suna placed a tender kiss on his lover's forehead. I love you. So freaking much. Rintaro seldom spoke these words. His replacements for I love you were sentences like let me take care of you, did something bad happen to you today? I miss you, you are worth the wait, I'm here for you. And that was enough, because how he behaved showed Hinata perfectly well that he really felt it. However, despite this, Hinata still appreciated the times Rin said it and kept them in his memory for a long time. I love you too. Then Suna brushed his lover's lips with his. After a while, he pressed their lips together in a more passionate kiss. And Hinata was kissing him back. Shoyo felt the warmth spread over his body. He slowly began to release more and more pheromones, which of course made Suna more aroused. Hinata and Suna were just outside the gate to Rintaru's family home. Shoyo was terribly stressed. Suna hugged him from behind, carefully placing his hands on his boyfriend's protruding belly. Don't worry, baby. Everything will be fine, he said in a soft voice. Hinata's 7th month of pregnancy was approaching soon. Less than 3 months ago, Rintaro told his parents about his relationship with Shoyo. His father was furious at hearing this, but his wife reassured him. Well, maybe she wasn't happy with the situation herself, but she knew there was nothing they could do about it anymore, and she was even a little glad to have grandchildren. Today Hinata was supposed to meet Rin's parents for the first time. They agreed to have a dinner together. And he feared the worst-case scenarios. As they entered the dining room, Suna's mom was stunned for a moment and then ran up to Hinata with a warm smile. You never said your partner was so cute. She looked at Rin disapprovingly. Well, someone never wanted to hear about him. Wow, she is so beautiful. Hinata accidentally spoke out loud. Mrs. Suna laughed lightly in response. Thank you, sweetie. After a while, Rintaru's mother stepped back into the room, officially speaking. Welcome. Hinata was surprised by the whole situation before. He whispered to Suna. Are you 100% sure that she's the alpha? The aura of the woman was definitely overwhelming, which only confirmed her position. However, looking only at her character, Hinata would probably think she is an Omega or Beta. She seemed quite nice and energetic and even seemed to like cute things. On the other hand, his father sat silently at the table, surveying the room. However, his aura was quite weak. Hinata reminded himself again that not all alphas and omegas are the same, and their characters can be very different. Sensing how stressed Hinata was, Mrs. Suna tried to relax the atmosphere as much as possible, which she succeeded after some time. The first impression she made was not wrong, she was actually nice. But, strange as it may sound, at the same time she was strict. But somehow not when it comes to Shoyo. You're so cute that if my grandchildren are as cute as you, I don't care about your class anymore. How did you meet? How long have you really been together? Does Rin take good care of you during this pregnancy? You've worked somewhere before, right? What have you been up to? Slow down a little. They can't keep up with you. We have been together for 3 years. That's crazy. Shoyo answered the rest of the questions from Mrs. Suna. During their conversation, it emerged that Hinata's mother was a very close friend of Mrs. Suna, who at one point simply disappeared. Mrs. Suna had not realized this when Rintaro told her before about Shoyo, but seeing him with her own eyes struck her with their similarity. And this is also one of the main reasons why she doesn't mind her son's relationship with him, and, on the contrary, even supports them. At the end of dinner, the atmosphere relaxed as eventually Rintaru's father slowly began to accept Hinata more. Suna decided that it was a good time and knelt in front of Shoyo, taking out the box that contained the ring. He decided to propose to his boyfriend right in front of his parents. "Will you marry me?" Shoyo's answer was obvious, it was nothing more than a cheerful "Yes, yes." And Mr. and Mrs. Suna didn't mind. In fact, they even thought it was a good decision, since they were already expecting babies. In addition, to Hinata's surprise, the joyful voice of Rin's mother reached his ears. "Oh yeah. They look so good together. When even did our son grow up so much? Shoyo-kun, call me your mom from now on." It has been over 4 years since Hinata and Suna became married. In the end, their wedding took place 6 months after Shoyo's birth. They had 2 children, twins. A boy and a girl. Their 5th birthday was approaching soon. Similar to how it is with Suna's parents, the girl who was the older twin was the alpha and the boy was the omega. Shoyo and Rintaru's daughter was very protective of her brother. Initially, when the relationship of the loved ones completely came to light, it was considered a scandal. However, after some time they gained the respect of others and even became the most recognizable family in the country. Now Rin was sitting on the rug and Shoyo was lying with his head on his lap. In that way they were close to their children and watched them playing with toys. At the same time they talked to each other about how they would spend their twins' birthdays. Mrs. Suna often spent time with her grandchildren, whom she loved very much, and they also adored her. And contrary to Rin's fear, Mr. Suna also surrounded them with love and was a great-grandfather to them. Despite all the adversities they encountered, they were a really happy family. "Mommy. Mika won't let me draw because she says paper is dangerous for me." Ray ran to his parents crying. Shoyo got up from his partner's lap and took his son in his arms, which made him feel a little better. Mika, on the other hand, shyly approached the rest of her family. "Mommy. Can I talk to Ray?" Mika asked in a sad voice. Shoyo carefully put his son back on the ground. Mika gently patted her brother's head and her eyes glazed over. "I'm so sorry. I didn't want to make you cry." Hearing these words, Ray started crying again and hugged his sister tightly. Mika didn't know what to do, so she only returned the hug and started to cry herself. "I'm tired. Daddy, you take care of the kids this time." Rintaru walked over to the twins and took them in his arms, then calmed them down. "How about if you two draw mommy together? This way, Mika, you will be able to look after Ray and keep him from accidentally hurting himself." "Yes. But we want to draw both mommy and daddy." Shoyo walked over to the twins, then kissed both of them on the forehead. "What have I done to deserve such adorable children?" Ray pulled Shoyo's hand, and Mika did the same to Rintaru. They led them to the center of the room where they were to sit together without moving so that the children could draw them. "Mika is so overprotective." "Yeah, sometimes is just too much." Shoyo smiled. "I wonder who she inherited it from." "Shut it." Suna replied, feeling a little embarrassed. Shoyo laughed at his husband's reaction. Ever since Shoyo got pregnant, Rin has become much more overprotective of his lover, and he still is. After some time, the twins ran up to them with wide smiles and handed them a drawing, saying that it is a gift. In addition to the figures of their parents in the drawing, they wrote "We love mommy and daddy" at the top. Grandma taught us how to write it. The twins, in return for a gift, asked for a group hug, which of course took place. Soon after, both children fell asleep at almost the same time. Mika on mom's lap and Ray in dad's arms. End.